Hey there, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're you're strapping in. Yeah, strapping in for a deep dive into the world of business strategy. You've given us a fantastic collection of articles and frameworks, kind of
Yeah.
like raiding a treasure chest of business brilliance. But instead of gold doubloons, we're talking SWOT analysis and blue ocean strategy. Guiding us through this strategic jungle is our expert speaker, who can probably recite Porter's five forces backwards in their sleep. They're here to help us connect the dots between those aha moments and turn those insights into action.
Happy to be here. I always say a good strategy is like a well-crafted recipe. You need the right ingredients, but you also need to know how to combine them for maximum impact.
Wow. I love that analogy. And judging by the stack of materials you've sent over, we've got a pantry full of strategic ingredients to work with. We've got everything from classic models like pestle and SWOT analysis to deeper dives on competitive advantage and even how to survive in a market as competitive as an overfished ocean. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, and I think we should, is to break down these frameworks and give you, our listener, the confidence to apply them to your own ventures. Because what good is a treasure map if you don't know how to use it?
Exactly. Knowledge is power, but only when you can put it into practice.
So true. Okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What exactly is business strategy, and why should anyone care?
At its core, strategy is about making choices, especially when resources are limited. It's about deciding where you want your business to go and how you're going to get there, even when the path isn't always clear. It's about saying no to good opportunities to save your energy for the great ones. All the materials you shared really underscore that idea of making deliberate, focused choices.
So, it's not just about having a brilliant idea, it's about making smart decisions that support that idea. And even more importantly, knowing which paths not to go down.
Precisely. It's about understanding your business's DNA, its strengths, its weaknesses, and how those align with the ever-changing world around it. A successful strategy helps you define your unique space in the market, who your ideal customers are, and what sets you apart from the competition.
It reminds me of that classic line, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Only in business, taking the wrong road can be a costly mistake.
Absolutely. And that's where understanding your industry's life cycle comes in. It's like checking the map before you set off on that road trip.
Because every business is part of a larger story, the evolution of its industry, right?
Exactly. Is your industry in its early stages, full of growth and excitement, but maybe a bit unpredictable? Or is it more mature, with established players and perhaps slower, steadier growth? Knowing where you stand in that life cycle is crucial for making the right strategic moves.
So what might be a good strategy in a brand new industry might be completely wrong for a mature one.
Exactly. Think about the early days of the internet. Companies like Amazon were laser focused on capturing market share, sometimes even at the expense of short-term profits. They knew the industry was a rocket ship and they wanted to be on board. But in a more established market, that approach might be too risky.
It's like the difference between being a sprinter and a marathon runner. You need a different strategy depending on the race you're running.
A perfect analogy. Now, speaking of different stages, you've also included some material on business models. If strategy is the why and the what, a business model is the how, right? It's the roadmap that outlines how you create and deliver value to your customers, and of course, how you generate revenue.
Revenue. Music to any entrepreneur's ears. But before we jump into the specifics of how to build a profitable business model, I think it's time we put on our strategic binoculars and scan the horizon. We've got some fascinating stuff here about pestle analysis and Porter's five forces, which I know you're a big fan of.
Who isn't? They're like the dynamic duo of strategic analysis,
Mhm.
helping us understand the external forces that shape our business environment. That's right. Pestle analysis is all about understanding those big picture trends and forces that can impact your business, often in ways you might not expect. It's about putting on your macro lenses and scanning the horizon for both storms and sunny skies.
So it's kind of like checking the strategic weather forecast, making sure you're prepared for anything Mother Nature, or in this case, the global economy, throws your way.
Precisely. PESTLE stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. All these interconnected forces that influence the business landscape. It's not enough to just know they exist. You need to understand how they interact and impact your specific industry.
Okay, I'm ready for a for instance. Give me an example of how a pestle factor could make or break a business.
Let's take the rise of social media. A technological and social force, right? Think about how it's completely revolutionized industries like marketing and advertising. Companies that adapted quickly, leveraging these new platforms to reach their customers, thrived, but those that clung to old methods often struggled to keep up.
It's like Blockbuster ignoring the rise of streaming. Ouch.
Exactly. Ignoring those seismic shifts in your pesto landscape can be a recipe for disaster. On the flip side, recognizing those changes early on can create incredible opportunities.
So pestle analysis is all about spotting those opportunities and threats before they become glaringly obvious.
It's about being proactive, not reactive. It's about anticipating those shifts and incorporating them into your strategic thinking.
It sounds like pestle analysis is essential for any business, but particularly for those operating in rapidly evolving industries.
Absolutely. Now, once you understand the broader forces at play, it's time to zoom in on your competitive landscape. And that's where Porter's 5 forces comes in. This framework is like putting on your X-ray vision to see the skeletal structure of your industry, the underlying forces that determine its profitability.
Ooh, I love this. We're peeling back the layers to get to the good stuff. So tell me, what are these 5 forces that govern the destiny of an industry?
Porter's 5 forces are the threat of new entrants, the bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of suppliers, the threat of substitute products or services, and the intensity of rivalry among existing competitors.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Let's break it down. Starting with the threat of new entrants. How do we figure out if an industry is easy or difficult for newcomers to break into?
It's all about barriers to entry. Imagine a castle surrounded by a moat and high walls. That's an industry with strong barriers to entry. It could be things like high startup costs, strict regulations, or even strong brand loyalty that makes it hard for new players to gain a foothold.
So a new business would need a pretty impressive battering ram to break through those defenses.
Precisely. Think about the aerospace industry. It takes huge amounts of capital, specialized knowledge, and government approvals just to get started. That's a tough nut to crack. On the other hand, industries with low barriers to entry, think food trucks or freelance writing, tend to attract more competition because it's relatively easy and inexpensive to get started.
Makes sense. But even if you've already stormed the castle and carved out your territory, you've still got to deal with those other forces, right? Like the bargaining power of buyers and suppliers.
Absolutely. This is about understanding who has the upper hand in the negotiation process. If you have a lot of customers, and they can easily switch to a competitor, then their bargaining power is high. They can demand lower prices, better service, and more favorable terms. Think about something like commodities, where buyers have lots of options.
Right, like coffee beans or crude oil. There are plenty of suppliers out there, so buyers have a lot of leverage. But what if you're selling something unique? Something customers can't get anywhere else?
Then you're in a much stronger position. A company like Apple, with its fiercely loyal customer base, has more flexibility in setting prices and dictating terms because their customers are less likely to switch brands.
It's all about differentiation, that secret sauce that makes you stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. And the same principle applies to suppliers. If you rely on a single supplier for a critical component of your product, they have a lot of bargaining power. They can increase prices, dictate delivery schedules, and even influence the quality of your product.
Yeah, so ideally you want to have multiple supplier options, just like you want to attract a diverse customer base.
Diversification is key. It gives you more flexibility and resilience in the face of market fluctuations. Now, the last of Porter's 5 forces we need to consider is the threat of substitute products or services. This one can sneak up on you if you're not paying attention.
Okay, remind me, what exactly qualifies as a substitute? Isn't that just another word for a competitor?
Not quite. Substitutes are products or services that might come from a completely different industry, but still satisfy the same customer need. Think about traditional taxis versus ride-sharing services like Uber or Lyft. They're not the same thing. But they both offer a solution to the problem of getting from point A to point B.
And Uber and Lyft really disrupted the taxi industry, didn't they?
Exactly. The rise of digital photography had a similar impact on companies like Kodak, who were slow to adapt to the shift from film. So, you can see how understanding these 5 forces, the interplay between rivalry, new entrants, buyers, suppliers, and substitutes, gives you this incredible panoramic view of your competitive landscape.
It's like having a strategic cheat sheet. You can see who the major players are, where the potential threats are coming from,
Yeah,
and even spot opportunities to gain a competitive advantage.
exactly. And that brings us to the next framework in our strategic toolkit, SWOT analysis. If Pestle and Porter's 5 forces are about understanding the external environment, SWOT analysis is about taking an honest look in the mirror. and assessing your internal strengths and weaknesses.
SWOT analysis. It's a classic for a reason, right? Reminds you of those trusty tools you always find in a handyman's toolbox.
Exactly. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a simple but powerful framework for taking stock of your internal capabilities and vulnerabilities, and then mapping those against the external opportunities and threats we've been discussing.
Okay, let's break it down, starting with the internal stuff. Strengths and weaknesses. What are we really looking for here?
Think of your strengths as your business's superpowers, those things you do exceptionally well that give you a competitive edge. It could be a stellar leadership team, a unique production process, a loyal customer base, or a powerful brand reputation. Anything that sets you apart from the competition and contributes to your success.
It's about identifying your secret sauce, that special something that makes you, you.
Precisely. Now, weaknesses, on the other hand, are areas where you might be falling short. Maybe your website is clunky and outdated, or your employee turnover is higher than you'd like. The key here is to be brutally honest with yourself. Ignoring those weaknesses won't make them magically disappear.
Ouch. Honesty can be tough. But I guess it's better to acknowledge those weaknesses so you can either address them head on or find ways to work around them.
Exactly. SWOT analysis isn't about dwelling on your shortcomings. It's about turning those insights into a plan of action.
Okay, so that's the internal view. Now let's bring back those strategic binoculars and talk about opportunities and threats.
Remember that pestle analysis we talked about earlier? Opportunities are those positive trends or shifts in the external environment that you could leverage to your advantage. It could be a new market opening up, a competitor stumbling, or even a technological advancement that you can capitalize on.
So it's about being opportunistic, spotting those waves and riding them to success. What about threats? Those sound a little scarier.
Threats are those external factors that could potentially rock the boat or even sink your ship entirely. It could be a new competitor emerging with a disruptive business model, economic turmoil impacting consumer spending, or even regulatory changes that disrupt your industry.
Okay, I'm getting the picture.
Yeah.
And it's not always pretty. But here's what I'm curious about. How do we connect the dots between our internal SWOT analysis and those external opportunities and threats?
That's where the real strategic thinking comes in. SWOT analysis isn't just about creating a static list. It's about understanding the interplay between those internal and external forces. It's about asking yourself, how can we leverage our strengths to capitalize on emerging opportunities? Can we overcome or mitigate our weaknesses to minimize the impact of those threats?
So it's like a game of strategic chess, where you're constantly evaluating your position, anticipating your opponent's moves, and planning your next move.
Love that analogy. And just like in chess, the more strategic options you can generate, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of the business world.
Speaking of strategic options, we briefly touched on TOWS analysis earlier. How does that fit into this framework?
TOWS analysis takes the SWOT framework and turns it into a dynamic tool for generating strategic choices. It encourages you to think systematically about how your internal strengths and weaknesses align with those external opportunities and threats.
So, instead of just identifying those factors, TOWS analysis prompts us to explore those what-if scenarios and brainstorm potential strategies.
Precisely. For instance, let's say your SWOT analysis reveals that you have a strong brand reputation, a strength, but you're operating in a market threatened by an economic downturn, a threat. TOWS analysis would encourage you to brainstorm ways to leverage that strong brand to weather the storm, maybe by launching a new budget-friendly product line or doubling down on customer loyalty programs.
This is starting to feel less like a business lecture and more like a strategic brainstorming session. I'm getting all fired up.
That's the idea. And if TOWS is the strategic brainstorming session, then SO analysis is the motivational pep talk. It's about shifting your focus from the negative weaknesses and threats to the positive. Strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Tell me more about this SO approach.
SOAR is all about channeling your SWOT analysis into a more visionary and action-oriented framework. It encourages you to dream big, to articulate your aspirations for the future, and then work backward, outlining the results you need to achieve those aspirations.
So, it's like setting your sights on a BHE, a big, hairy, audacious goal,
Yeah.
and then using SO analysis to plot your course.
Exactly. And by focusing on strengths and opportunities, SO analysis creates a more empowering and optimistic tone, which can be incredibly motivating for teams.
It's like that saying, what you focus on expands. SOR helps you focus on the positive, which can lead to more positive outcomes.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that brings us to the crucial link between strategy and financial viability. Even the most brilliant strategy will fall flat if it doesn't make sense financially.
You're preaching to the choir here. It's all very well to have these grand visions, but at the end of the day, businesses need to make money, right?
Absolutely. And that's why building a robust financial model is essential. It helps you answer critical questions. Can you afford this strategy? What are the potential returns? What are the risks? It's about ensuring that your strategic choices are grounded in financial reality.
It's like having that friend who keeps you grounded, reminding you that even though money doesn't grow on trees, strategic investments can lead to growth and profitability.
Precisely. A well-crafted financial model helps you understand those trade-offs and make informed decisions that align with your overall strategic goals.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. It's like we've taken a crash course in strategic thinking. But I have to say, I'm feeling more energized and empowered than overwhelmed. It's amazing how a little strategic thinking can transform your perspective.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Remember, these frameworks are just tools. The real magic happens when you combine them with your own unique insights, experiences, and intuition.
So, it's not about finding the one perfect framework. It's about building a strategic toolkit that you can adapt and customize to fit your specific needs.
Absolutely. Be curious, experiment, and don't be afraid to challenge conventional thinking.
Great advice. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive into the world of business strategy. We've explored the why, the what, and the how of strategic thinking. And I hope you, our listener, are feeling inspired to tackle your own strategic challenges with newfound confidence. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, or in this case, a single strategic decision. Until next time, happy strategizing.